Hello, YouTube world. This is going to be a really quick video on CNN and concerning the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. And the video is going to deal with the brainwashing and the totalitarian, tyrannical, fascist propaganda that is being perpetuated every single day at CNN. As right now, our country looks a lot more like China or North Korea or Nazi Germany compared to the America that we grew up in. This country right now looks nothing like what America used to be, being founded on the Constitution. So I want to play this quick clip from the CNN morning show. And this is Mandela Barnes, this man on the left side right here. He's the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. And he's speaking in response to protests that have been planned to reopen Wisconsin so people could get back to work. All the people out there that are struggling to feed their families and to pay their mortgage and don't want to be out on the streets starving. They want to get back to work. So here's the clip.
Lieutenant Governor, there is a protest planned for 1 o'clock today. The title of
I want to play the start of this again. Notice when she mentions a planned protest, he rolls his eyes and starts shaking his head. The arrogance of these politicians and the way they look down at the majority of society is truly just unbelievable right now. The just absolute over-the-top arrogance of these politicians.
Lieutenant Governor, there is a protest planned for 1 o'clock today. The title of the group is Reopen
And there we
Wisconsin.
see him shaking his head and rolling his eyes, incredibly arrogantly looking down upon the audacity and foolishness of these Americans to think they can actually exercise their First Amendment rights. So let's play the rest of the video now.
They have been denied a permit for this protest by the governor's office. They're going to hold it anyways. The organizer writes the permit was filed as a courtesy, not to ruffle feathers. The rally is still happening, encouraging people to...
And there it is again, shakes his head in anger again when she mentioned these people planning to protest to reopen Wisconsin and get back to work.
Peacefully assemble. If there is not social distancing among everyone there, what will the response from the police be?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, the whole idea of it does more than ruffle feathers.
So there he says the whole idea of this does more than ruffle feathers. So people peacefully assembling to simply protest that they want to get back to work so they can feed their families and pay their mortgages, that's doing more than ruffling feathers, that is just, from this politician's point of view, extremely egregious behavior.
To suggest that they didn't want to ruffle feathers, so they applied for a permit as a courtesy is a baloney assumption. And I'll say too that this is a public health crisis that we're in the middle of. These people are literally flirting with death because.
So there he says these people are flirting with death. So these numbers they put out on CNN about the death numbers from coronavirus, whatever it's at now, 50,000. So if let's assume those are true and they're not, we know they're lying. Those would be roughly on par with just the seasonal flu we have every year. Over 60,000 people died of influenza, the normal flu in 2018. And we know they're lying about those numbers and padding the numbers. Many doctors have come out and mentioned they've been instructed on every death certificate to put the cause of death as coronavirus. People are dying from things that are hardly or not even related at all to coronavirus. Heart attack, diabetic episodes. I can go on and on with this, where the death is being labeled from coronavirus. I wouldn't be surprised if people out there, excuse me, if you get hit by a bus and run over, that they're putting the cause of death as coronavirus.
We are losing lives across this country. We are losing lives in this state. And specifically, you look at the racial disparities that exist.
So now he mentions racial disparity. So now he's going to get into the race baiting, the divide and conquer of pushing this racial politics.
And this trends along a very dangerous lines where people feel like, well, this doesn't affect me. It only affects those people. You know, you look at the rate of transmissions, you look at Milwaukee where we are just under 50% of the positive test cases. We are 60% of the deaths, which have disproportionately been African Americans. We have 19% of the infections being in the Hispanic, Latino.
And this is a huge divide and conquer agenda, and a huge part of this propaganda they're pushing right now is how the coronavirus is many more blacks and Latinos are dying of the coronavirus, and they're literally pushing racism into this discussion on a daily basis.
Community. And so this just shows an unrestricted amount of privilege that people.
Let's play that again when he just said they're an unrestricted amount of privilege.
So this just shows an unrestricted amount of privilege that people think that they have, or they can just show up because it is not affecting or impact or may not be impacting them. Totally just.
So he essentially just said there that peacefully gathering to protest, and what these people are protesting for is to get back to work because people can't afford to buy food and to pay their mortgage. And he is essentially saying that exercising your First Amendment rights and peacefully protesting is white privilege. So this man, Mandela Barnes, is very clearly saying he doesn't believe in the First Amendment and we should not have freedom of speech. And if you exercise freedom of speech whatsoever, that is white privilege, which is so absurd and ridiculous. I just can't even get into it.
Regarding the lives of not just marginalized communities in our state, but impacting and also compromising the lives of themselves and the people that they come around. It is the most selfish behavior that we're seeing on display.
Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes.
Okay, and I want to look at a couple of photos here real quick. So when this Mandela Barnes character came on, and by the way, you know, I've never heard of this man, and probably really nobody outside the state of Wisconsin has ever heard of this man before the last couple of weeks. And we have all these political characters that are low level that really no one has ever heard of. And now they're taking part in this massive power grab, and they're getting their 15 minutes of fame and acting from a tyrannical position, and are just loving exerting their will over other people and taking away their constitutional rights. So when this man, the Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, comes on, notice we see the number 23 here, a very common number that is used in the Freemason, occult, and satanic world. 2 times 3 is 6. Myself and many others have spoken a lot about the number 23 being used in rituals and all over the place in the media. And I want to point out something I want to talk about here, and I'm going to play a short video on this. Look at the eyes of some of these newscasters on CNN and MSNBC and these other networks, and you'll notice some really strange things. I think the name of this woman is Poppy Harlow, and this is just a still photo of this interview. And if you look at her eyes, it's just this blank, nobody is home, glazed over look, to me very much like she's under mind control. And of course, right after this interview, this was the same day that they were opening up some businesses in Georgia, and we see this interview with the correspondent in Atlanta, and he's in a parking lot. Nobody's near him, but of course he has to put the mask on to push this fear agenda that he's in a grave danger simply by being outside. So I want to play another quick clip. This is literally from the same interview with Mandela Barnes. I'm going to mute it. I've heard enough of Mandela Barnes speaking. I don't need to hear any more hot air coming out of his mouth. But I want you to just look at the eyes. This is Poppy Harlow, and I think the other co-host, his name is Jim Ciuto. And just look at how the eyes seem really blank and vacant and glassy and glazed over, like there's just nobody at home. And in particular, the man here, Jim Ciuto, when I look at, I mean, he looks like just a psychopath to me. But just look, pay attention to their eyes. And watch here how just glassy they are, and he rarely blinks. It looks like no one's at home. Same thing over here with her eyes, very glassy, nobody's at home. And just something, something is very off with this when I look at their eyes, and this is something I've noticed a lot over the years. And, in my opinion, these anchors they hire at a lot of these news networks, they kind of fall into one of four categories. These people are either into Freemasonry and Satanism and the globalist agenda, and they're willingly and knowingly in on it, or if they're not in that group, a lot of them are compromised or they've been bribed. Where let's say, some of these male anchors, they've been set up where they met a prostitute and they didn't know it. And let's say that woman was 16, 17 years old, and they bribe them with that, of saying if they don't do what they want them to, the elites and the people that run the station, they're going to publicly put out that information that they will be convicted of statutory rape. So bribery like that is very common. What I think is very likely the case with these two is you also have a lot of these news anchors that are products of the CIA and assets of the CIA and MK Ultra. And they literally use these programs like MK Ultra, these mind control, brainwashing, and programming agendas, where they literally create these human robots that are totally under control. Now, if these newscasters and anchors don't fall into those three groups, the other fourth option is sometimes they just hire people that are extremely dumb and easy to control, people that cannot think for themselves at all, have no critical thinking, are just very naive and dumb, and they're very easy to control. They'll do whatever their bosses tell them because they just want that paycheck. So that's something that is very common that we see. And, one more shot of Poppy Harlow here with just the vacant, nobody is home, glassy, glazed over eyes. And, like this man, Mandela Barnes, this is either a man that is evil, he's in on this New World Order agenda, he knows exactly what he's doing. And if it's not that, same thing. He's probably been bribed and compromised, or he's been mind controlled, or it's possible that this man is just dumb and naive and he doesn't really know what's going on, and he was put in that position because he could be manipulated, and he would follow whatever orders his superior gave him. So you never know definitively what's going on with these politicians and news anchors, but almost assuredly, almost all of them fall into one of those four categories, where they're either into Freemasonry and Satanism, they've either been compromised through bribes, they're either CIA and MK Ultra assets, or they're just very naive and dumb people that are, power and money hungry, and they'll do whatever their superiors tell them. So anyhow, God bless everybody. Just some things to look for. When you're watching the news, keep an eye on their eyes, keep an eye on what they're saying, and just what to look out for. So God bless everyone. Have a great